Okay, awesome. Another day, another guest. Welcome to On the Overrun. I think it's episode 18 of season 2. I was thinking this week maybe 2 more episodes for this season, take a break, refresh, just try and think of what's new for the next season and so. But for now, we actually got our second female guest.
Yay!
So yeah, well done, you made it. We have Vann from Staden.
From Staden, we can do that as well.
Okay. This is an English podcast. So she is more commonly known as Wine, Wheels and Watches.
A bit of
a tongue twister. On Instagram, she has an awesome page. But I first have to ask, so if you had to rank the top 3 passions, can you do that?
That's like choosing your favorite child, asking a parent for that, but all parents have a favorite child, so I can do that. It would literally be kind of the way that I've placed it. So wine is, I might be crucified for this, but wine, wheels, and watches. So literally the way I place it is like my ranking.
Okay.
But wines and wheels are pretty much on par, but watches is like the background child that if you've got a lot of money, you can totally get invested, but
that's the thing with watches, it's very expensive.
Very expensive
wine and cars also, but watches is like, you really have to have quite a few cents in the bank to be able to spend on a watch, which you don't really drive around.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah, so
it's not like a necessity.
Yeah, it's not a utility. Yeah, it's not really a utility. So wines, wheels, watches, we've got it. Wine is first. Okay, so for me, cars are first. Wine is very, very close second. And why I say this, because I live in Stellenbosch, which is wine country. So you get to experience some good wines. But before I touch on cars, where did the other 2 passions come from?
So my brother's a winemaker. He used to make wine at Boekenhout's. So that's proper. Well, I grew up in the northern Transvaal. When I was about 16, we moved to Franschhoek, and that's kind of where the wine habit evolved and developed, and from just drinking it to kind of really getting tucked in behind it, the making of it. I also make cider, so the 2 was on par with each other. So it became like a proper passion of mine to kind of explore new cultivars and just getting sunk into a bottle, but appreciating it and not just dashing it away. So that's where that started. And watches, I've always had a fascination for cool timepieces. And as soon as you kind of adult and you can afford something, I think my first watch was a Nixon, and I think I've got about 10 of them. And then you slowly but surely evolve. And my first real big purchase was a Tag. This one.
Oh, that's nice. That's proper.
This was the dream come true. And since then I've acquired a few other pieces, but it's always been a passion. I never thought I could kind of make a business of it. I'm in publishing, so we've got a lifestyle magazine, and then I thought I want to do a watch magazine, which was insane, especially for publishing. People are always another magazine, that must be scary, and it was scary, but the culture and the heritage around watches and what people are willing to put into it it'll blow your mind. These oaks are dropping 2 bar on a Patek Philippe or dropping $1,000 on a Nixon. It's still the same passion that goes between the 2. So that's kind of where the gig started for me. And cars,
please tell the story from the start.
My feet could pretty much touch the pedals, to my mom's horror. I've just always been going, whether it was tractors, whether it was quad bikes, whether it was my dad's KB 250 Suzu. It goes way, way back. My whole family, my uncle Arthur Pullman, he's got a wine farm in Botterville. Well, he passed away, but he was one of the first people to own a Porsche in the country. So,
oh, wow.
And he's got this cool little mounted box with the Porsche in there. And it was just as a kid, I was what does it take to kind of be the first or something? So I've always kind of chased that dream. So
yes.
Very difficult to be the first. So I'll just be one of the second, third, fourths. But that's kind of where the passion on that started, and it's just evolved. I was very lucky for kind of the getting into this gig, and everybody asks you, I promise you go to a Bri or anybody hears that you're a motor journo, how did you get into it? I was very lucky. I was working for a magazine, and they needed somebody to kind of write a quick little 100-word on an electric car.
Yeah.
And then Honda came out with the Honda Jazz hybrid in 2011, and nobody could drive the car at the office that I was working at. And they're like, oh, do you want to drive the car? And I was like, sure, why not? And that was 2011. And since then, I've probably done about 200 cars. And
hectic.
Very spoiled, very privileged. And the gig just took off from there.
Ew. That's awesome. Starting with the Honda Jazz, actually. Honda Jazz hybrid of all cars. I actually have a friend who he has an Instagram page now, which I don't mention, not important. But anyway, he started the passion long ago, and he like sort of became a mix between like, you know, a spotter in Joburg and someone who just gives car news on Instagram, whatever.
Oh, cool.
But he wanted to also get into like the YouTube world and the driving of cars, the testing and reviewing, as many people do these days. And he actually started off recently with the Mahindra, what's the Bakkie?
The Karoo pickup.
Yes, but the Karoo pickup. Yes. And I saw quite a few people actually drive around that. I thought, that's actually like, I know he hates Bakkies and he's not a big fan of Mahindra, but that's how you go, like that's how you start.
It's interesting, that car. I've had a few arguments with people about the car originally, and I kind of had to eat my words. I was like, I didn't dig it. It was slow on the pull off. As you kind of go up a hill, it's got a bit of a stutter. And after that, like literally having that car for a week, I was like, this is pretty decent.
Really?
Like, if you don't have $500,000 to put down for a double cab, like that is a solid car, great engineering behind it, and pretty much loads of cars coming from India is killing it.
Very much
but I think we're so stuck in our Hilux country and
status.
Kind of, it's either Hilux, Isuzu, Ford. Let's not discredit the Ranger. But I think that pickup has got quite a bit of potential.
Yeah, there's quite a few of the smaller, you know, Eastern brands. Let's say Mahindra, but also Haval, who did extremely well in South Africa. So there's quite a few of the Eastern brands coming through and sweeping the floor of some of these German or Japanese brands. Just because, like, I feel the level of car, the quality of car has improved so much over the years.
Definitely.
Like your average car, how do I put this? Like even your cheaper car these days are fine. Like in terms of using it for utility, going from A to B, you know, having aircon and Bluetooth, like those things, it's common and standard in basically any car these days.
Yeah.
So, like, you really have to, you have to put some reasoning in to justify why you actually go expensive. Like,
sure.
yes, you have a passion, like that's another reason, but in terms of just using a car for what it's built, you can get away a lot cheaper these days.
No, for sure. These Oaks are knocking it out the park. And one of the brands, like probably my go-to, one of my favorites at the moment from like, I don't want to say entry level because that's kind of defacing them as a brand, which it isn't, is Suzuki. They've been killing it.
No,
from the Jimny, which they've actually upped their production now because they couldn't keep up with demand.
Yes, the first year was sold out before it even was released.
Even to review a car, the journo list was, I think we've got about 60 journos in Cape Town. Normally I'm like quick to get the car, so I don't have to wait till number 60. But kind of the queue to get in behind that wheel was insane, and everybody were pitching great articles. So it was like they could kind of take their pick of who they want to work with and how quickly they want to work with them. So
like a brand like Suzuki in that position, like pulling the strings.
They killed it with that, and now they've just launched the Brezza Vitara.
Yes.
Which again, I was a little bit skeptical because I love the Vitara as a brand. I think it's a phenomenal car, and the Brezza is kind of the baby brother Vitara. And with that, again, from an affordability point of view, kind of looking at their competitors, whether it's the Ford EcoSport or kind of anything in that range, they're going to kill it. They're literally going to wipe the floor with everyone. My personal opinion, I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong on this one.
Yeah, but even the smaller cars like the Espresso they brought out rather recently.
Damn cute.
And what's the other one? The Baleno also, which is now the Scarlet or the Starlet of Toyota.
Lots
controversy.
of controversy on that.
But no, they're doing very well.
And there's actually Toyota is also now bringing out a car that's going to be competing against the Vitara Brezza. So, and that's like in the next couple of weeks that it's dropping. So that's again like the controversy is just going to continue with that.
Yeah, and I often think about those cars being sort of duplicates. To take German cars especially, everyone under the Volkswagen umbrella as a lot of the cars are very much the same. Just take the Cayenne and the X7, and then also go a bit more expensive, Bentayga, whatever. Like all those cars have the same base, same sort of technology.
Yeah.
It just overlaps. It at the end of the day, it comes down to preference.
Yeah.
It does come down to preference. But with your lower end cars, now suddenly you have more choice, And now it comes down to the nitty gritty things like maintenance plans and service plans.
Yeah.
I watched a video about the Starlet versus the Baleno from Suzuki and Toyota, and it basically the 75% of the 25% of the video was about the cars being the same. 75% was about the nitty gritty stuff that put them apart.
Yeah.
So you have a lot more. You are spoiled for choice these days.
Yeah, fully. And with regards to service plans and dealer networks, because back in the day, like Suzuki as example, they didn't have such a big dealer network. Today they are kind of everywhere you look, there's a dealership. But it is because they've got such a firm grip on the market, and I think they just went at the right time, pulled the trigger, and just went for it. So it's quite impressive what they've kind of achieved, and I think they celebrated their 100-year anniversary now as well. And then kind of you move from them to Peugeot, and they've kind of done a whole new brand identity, and they're like one of the oldest standing car brands in the world, which people sometimes discredit because it's French and they've got like a crappy reputation, which again is so unfair. But they've now dropped it's called the 2008, but I'm calling it 2008. It sounds better.
Yeah, it does.
And that car is insane. I drove the GT line, and again, this is a brand that's going to give a run for their money to Audi for whether it's the Q3 or probably like. Yeah, I think maybe kind of if you look at the price range, they might still compete there. Or if you look at the Volkswagen T-Roc, like all those oaks are going to be fighting for the same piece of cake. But it'll be interesting to see how that develops and evolves, because that car it's gorgeous. Like, and if it comes down to the nitty gritties, it comes to kind of the appeal of the car, because all of them from an engine point of view, they're pretty much similar. So it is going to come down to pricing and kind of what people look for in a car physically. So it's interesting to see everybody kind of gunning for it.
Yes, but taking it back to journalistic, like reviewing the cars, testing the cars. Of course, a new car comes out, journalists and guys like you are very, very keen to get on these cars, test it, review it, get it out first.
Yeah.
And that often, taking the Suzuki Jimny scenario, it often creates a problem where you have 15 articles just from Cape Town of people testing the Jimny. And, after the first two, you sort of get the idea of how the car is. So now you also have to be clever and go for cars that, maybe you're going to get first, or cars that are not as commonly tested. Cars that are not, it's not your new Mercedes C-Class or the new 911, like still cool cars. But now you have to sort of think out of the box, like what am I going to do to actually stand out? So what do you do?
It's difficult. Like you think that, I think first and foremost, and I hate kind of even bringing it up because there shouldn't be a divide, but kind of being female in the industry there's only a handful of us.
That's true.
But everyone kind of, all the females out there, like I've got so much respect for them in the industry, and they really kill it. Like there's some top girls that's kind of pretty much on par with the Oaks, and so you have to kind of take that into consideration. So you've got kind of one stepping stone. People sometimes want to hear what a female thinks. Again, like we get shaped with the comb of, girls shouldn't really be driving cars, but I know girls that knows a hell of a lot more about cars than some Oaks do. So that's kind of one of the differentiating factors. But other than that, you just have to be quirky. Look, none of us are Jeremy Clarkson or anything along those lines. So you can't be too smart. And sometimes I see people and I just cringe. But we try to just do it a little bit different. I kind of, as much as I kind of take a deep dive into the car and kind of look from a spec point of view, performance, kind of you have to just take a step back and go speak to the average person and say, listen, this is a Kev car. Like, it's got a cool armrest, its comfortability in the car is kind of, those are big things like armrest. You don't realize it till you don't drive a car that doesn't have one. So those are the kind of things that you have to kind of put a bit more emphasis on if you want to be different. But it's just kind of, you have to be thorough and you have to give people a bit of entertainment value. So, and it becomes difficult. It's like comedians that have to come up with new gigs all the time,
Yes.
new jokes. And so, yes, it is. I'm pretty funny every now and then. I think this is more of a stress situation, so I'm not that funny. But you kind of just have to be out there.
Yeah, take a chance or two.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. No, I think when it comes to appealing to the average guy, like the car market, there's a lot of car fans and people get passionate about cars and petrol heads. And that market is sort of saturated. You know, every need in terms of media or content I want to consume, it's basically met. Like there's not really there are a few niches maybe not covered as much, but then you have to sort of go ask the question out of a content creator point of view, like how am I appealing to the average guy? Like how am I creating appreciation and sort of getting them interested in the cars? And as you said now, when just chatting to the average guy, asking like, what do you actually like about this car? Yeah. Like, what is so interesting about this car for you actually? Like, I'm talking about the engine and how it has a twin scroll turbo and had like, I don't know, this active radar cruise control. But what do you actually like about this car? Like, what's actually so cool? So, it's sort of a question of how do you still appeal to that the petrol heads, the guys who actually like the cars, but then still make it compelling to the the average oak.
For sure.
So looking at like Jeremy Clarkson, for instance, I recently rewatched Top Gear because lockdown, who wouldn't? And I just saw like those guys are not your typical like reviewers. They don't like go about every single spec or engine component in the car and just go into a thorough investigation kind of thing. They just like, oh, this is cool. Yep. I like this. Like, this is awesome.
Let's see if this car can drive off a cliff and survive.
Yeah. But for you, it's not only cars.
Yeah.
Now suddenly it's wine and watches also. So that's a different kind of market, and that sets you apart totally. So I want to know, before you answer, how did this come together? Like, how did these three things, like how did Wines, Wheels and Watches start?
Yeah, it's so difficult to answer that because I can't really remember when I decided to do it. But so I'm in publishing, so I've got a magazine called Southern Vines, and through that, like, listen, we've had it for like the last 6 years, so through that I've kind of developed a lot of relationships. But because it was still called Southern Vines, everybody kind of assumed that it was a wine magazine. So we got a lot of interest from like a lot of wine farms like sending us wine, and I was like, well, this is so cute. I'm already doing my car reviews. Why can't I review wine? Like, I've always had a passion for wine. I've got a very neat collection as well. And I was like, well, these guys are sending us wine. I might as well review it like I would review a car. And that kind of just evolved. And I was like, well, I was going to call it Wheels and Wine. And I was like, it just didn't have a nice ring to it. Yeah. I was like, wine, wheels, and I was like, watches, like, why not? It's like www. And I actually wanted my website to be, or my blog to be www.www.co.za. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm going for a stretch there.
Yeah.
I managed to kind of create a platform where I could kind of literally play out my dreams and fantasies and just live this life that's Instagram pretty.
Yeah.
And happens to be kind of all my passions in one. And that's difficult. Like, you get quite a bit of backlash where people are like, yeah, but you don't have a niche. Like, you've got like 3 different things you focus on. Sometimes, so like, especially if we do like travel pieces while we take the car somewhere, so I'll review some accommodation, and like, people discredit you and say like, well, you're not really focused. You're not really just a journalist, or you're not just really like a sommelier or like a wine fundy. And I'm like, listen, please, if you can do everything you want to do, why wouldn't you? So it literally just started off what was going to be a cool Instagram handle, and is there a platform where I can kind of do everything that I love in one go? And it is difficult. Like, I take my hat off for a lot of bloggers, like the content that they produce, and they're always on. And I'm like, I always thought I was always on, but that's a different on. Like, these oaks are constantly where there's like, oh, cool, I can take like a shot of this mug and like #coffee. And now it's like you have to force yourself. You're like, okay, which way am I going to hold the wine bottle today? Like, am I going to do a cool pose in the car? Like you constantly but you have to be fresh, and you have to kind of create an identity. So I've pretty much, and everybody jokes that I always wear black, but it's like who I am, top to toe. Every now and then I'll spice it up with white t-shirts just to throw everyone off. but yeah, so this is like you create an identity and you have to follow through, and people sometimes think it's fake, and I'm like, listen, this is as real as you're going to get. Like, I'm going to kind of drop a F-bomb. I'm going to say the wrong thing, but it's who I am. And that's a lacquer thing. If you kind of get to do your own thing and you're not doing it for someone else, you get to be as authentic as possible. And I think that's kind of what sets people apart. Like, the second you're authentic and the second it doesn't look forced or put on, then your head's through in this industry. But you constantly have to push the boundaries. It's like you can't play it too safe, but being authentic is probably one of the major things in this gig.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think because you are also women, like, of course, not a lot of women are in the industry for some reason. Well, not for some reason. We can, we can chat about that another time. But like from my standpoint, I like what you do because it's sort of following a journey kind of thing. Because it's not just cars. So I mean, you take the car on a journey, you stay at this place, you taste this wine, and maybe go look at this watch you have, and it fits with the car you're driving today, like that kind of thing. I think people like the story or the narrative sort of aspect to it.
I think we get the same things over and over, so at least I get to spice it up and do different things on different days. But it is tricky and it does get quite complicated, and especially the line between alcohol and driving, like it's something that can never be crossed.
Yes, that's true.
So it's either one or the other. Like sometimes I'll team it up by literally just doing a photo shoot of a cool car on a wine farm, but like I'm obviously not going to go tasting or on the same day. So you kind of have to play it safe and not go like, cool, let's go wine tasting and like just smash it away and drive this M8 and
I thought of actually having some wine here today. I thought, maybe it's crossing the line. Maybe it's so cheesy because you are a wine fanatic.
Listen,
so
for the next one I'll Uber here and then we can
that'll work.
Have like a cool tasting. I'll bring some of my favorites.
Please do. I'm intrigued to know, when you were a lot younger, when you were a child in high school, in school, whatever, what did the dream job look like? Was cars included? Was what you're doing today? Because social media wasn't a thing.
Listen, it wasn't a thing back then. I think, look, I wanted to be a lawyer at one point. I wanted to be an astronaut. That was like between those two, and I was like, we live in Africa. Like, I don't think this astronaut gig's ever going to fly, literally. And then I thought, listen, there's a lot of people in trouble, so they need lawyers. So that was kind of the gig. And my dad said you can always talk yourself out of a situation. So maybe it's a gig worth exploring.
Yeah.
And then life happens. You go to school and meet mates, and you're like, maybe that's not for me. And I wanted to take a gap year, and none of that happened. So I literally went into advertising sales, and through that, like, I'm so grateful for that gig. It might be kind of like the soul patch to the beard of corporate world, but nothing can get done without sales. So I was like, that's a gig that'll always be needed. So whether it's equipment being sold to doctors or advertising space or selling wine, like there's always a need for that kind of skill. And so I honed in on that, and when I started my own mag, I was like, thank God I can do sales because I don't need to get somebody else in. So I don't think sales was ever my dream gig, I can promise you that. But so just luckily for me, it evolved into kind of the journalist gig, and so I'm very grateful for that. Still do sales, and we've actually got a new magazine coming out called Apex. It's a car magazine.
Oh,
so we like competing against the big gun, the only big gun out there. We won't drop names. They don't need extra credit.
If you don't know the name, then are you even a car fan?
Never know. So Apex is being launched first week of April.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It is going to be pretty badass. We've got some cool head-to-heads. We've got a cool launchpad section that just focuses on all the latest cars. We've got a cool opinion pieces. We've got top journalists. I've got a badass editor. So we've got cool things coming up, and it's nerve-wracking. Sleep is optional at this point in time.
Fair.
Yeah, so there's that to look forward to.
There we have it. You have it. You heard it here first. All right.
Literally.
Just by the way, also, if you wanted to be an astronaut, don't cut yourself short because South Africa has a space agency. I don't know if you knew this.
Listen, back then, no, I didn't.
But we have a space agency. If they do any flights, I'm not sure. Maybe
I'll
you
ask
can.
them for a test drive.
Yeah, I have a contact. Maybe I can just, hand it over. Say, hey, Vann wants to go for a flight. Maybe just give it a shot. Can't you review it? Can't you on YouTube?
Listen, there we go. Sky's the limit. My next review is going to be on. Well, maybe I can chat to Mark Shuttleworth or Elon and check.
Yeah.
Want me to do a review?
I'm testing this rocket ship today. This is not like the M8 I tested. It's actually much more.
So this is that's how you put yourself apart, I guess.
Yeah. That is what you call authentic. All right. So let's get to cars. You are currently driving, which you can tell us about. I'm really intrigued about this car, and I saw it and rode quite a few times in Stellenbosch. Of course, I have no idea about how it drives and anything, but it looks awesome, looks sinister, looks menacing.
Pretty
much. But please give me some insight into what it's like and what it is.
I've got the BMW X7. This is their M50i, which is kind of their sportsback on it. That car is insane obviously from an affordability point of view. We won't even kind of go into that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you can afford that car, you're not even going to price tag something you don't look at. But control is insane. There's a few things that you have to get used to. So it's got active kind of lane assistance. So you can, and this is what I realized. Everybody always takes a piss and says BMW drivers, they don't know how to use their indicator, which nowadays I think BMW kind of are forcing you to use your indicator. So if you're kind of in a lane and you just want to quickly overtake somebody, that active lane control kicks in. So it kind of just nudges you hey, you're about to cross the line without your indicator. So I was BMW solved their own problem for their drivers. You kind of have to use your indicator, and then it smoothly goes over, indicator back. So I think they managed to fix a problem that BMW drivers had. So the indicator works.
I just have to tell you, so last night we actually, some of our friends at Rez, we went out for a pizza night, and we were in town. There was this old 5 Series in front of us, and I immediately start making jokes about BMW and the type of drivers they are. They don't have indicators. They are unable to park parallel. There are just certain characteristics about the BMW, that everyone, a car guy, knows. And there were probably 20 or so turns, and not one of them they used the indicator. I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought, is this even real? But it's so true. Usually BMWs, it's the indicators are optional, It's just a different type of driver.
So they fixed that problem. Because
that's unbelievable.
Kind of annoying when you want to kind of just quickly shoot past someone who and a car kind of pulls back, and I'm
no.
You have to use your indicators, smooth transition, off you go. Yeah. So that's something that maybe they fixed. Maybe they try to kind of force you to use the indicator. But from a control point of view and kind of just acceleration. So my thing that I normally base a good car on, so my favorite saying is dropping the hammer. So that's kind of where most of my reviews, I kind of give a star rating. So obviously engines, nobody makes a crappy engine anymore, so you don't even go on that. So literally, if you already pulled off, you put 80 on the highway, got slow Joe in front of you, as the second you overtake, that sweet spot between 80 and 120, if you drop the hammer and you go, you need to go. There needs to be no question that you're going. And doing it in a pocket rocket like a Suzuki Swift or in the X7, it's like a dream come true. It's literally you just floor it and off you go, done and dusted. So that's kind of where all my, secretively, most of my judgment comes in between 80 and 120.
Sure.
So lots of people probably don't think of that, but it is that the need for speed. You need to quickly overtake someone. So that's kind of one of my main things that I look at, and I never really write about it or put it in my videos, but kind of internally, that's where my judgment comes from, the 80 to 120, not the 0 to 100, the 80 to 120.
The mid-range.
And that X7 is sublime. That is obviously, when you're sitting with the M50, it is gorgeous.
Yeah, and so I'm not a big fan of SUVs, okay? As many car people are, just because because of how big they are, sometimes impractical in terms of parking and just driving around. Sometimes you're very stressed about how, broad they are, so maybe hitting a curb or something. And I also feel that anything a SUV can do, station wagon or a estate car can also do, and probably better. So that's just my point of view. So I wouldn't necessarily buy SUV. I'd rather go for estate. I wouldn't go Q7. I'd go A6.
Interesting.
That kind of. So that's just my viewpoint. Massive estate fan. But what's your view on, like, the X7 is massive and it's a very, very big SUV. Huge, yeah. But what's your opinion on SUVs and the amount of them these days on the road? Yeah,
it is probably one of the largest growing. Well, actually, no. So SUVs has got a massive gap in the market. Obviously, if you look at Fortuners and all those cars, there are a million of them on the road. And Fortuner drivers are almost in line with BMW drivers when it comes to lack of indication. And like between the two of them, it's very, very close second. So from my side, like, obviously you see we know like the insides, and like we obviously look at a market from a different point of view. SUV market has grown nicely, but the compact SUV market is
it's exploding.
That is probably the biggest segment grower out there. Like, before you look at buying a Polo, you're probably going to kind of lean over and kind of look at the T-Roc, or that's kind of with the price, like, I don't know when last you've seen the price of a Polo. Like, it's insane. I remember back in the day it was like 150k for like top of the range, and now you can maybe buy like a Vivo at that price, if even. So from that point of view, like, if you've got the option between kind of a small hatchback or a sedan, you're most likely going to push over to a compact SUV, especially in our country. Like, our roads are crappy, and you kind of feel that sense of safety to an extent. You feel safer in a bigger car.
Yeah, I do.
So I think that sweet spot at this point in time is compact SUV, and not as much SUVs as it used to be back in the day. But I think that market, I personally like, the bigger the better. So I drive a 2011 Jeep Cherokee, which is very questionable, and this is like my second one. I had the 2005, and now I've got the 2011. It's a 3.7 litre, and I don't even need to say anything further.
Was the 2005, was it the V8 or the V6?
V6.
V6, okay.
No, it's crazy, and it's just, you look at that thing and like you just see your wallet go empty, your bank account go empty,
everything
and your
just
petrol
depletes.
tank goes empty.
Yeah.
And I've still got that problem with the model that I've got now, but I'm a massive Jeep fan, so I'll probably always make bad judgment errors and decisions, and my next car is probably going to be a Jeep as well. I'm eyeing out a Wrangler, but
I thought it was coming.
When you make a crappy decision, you need to make it properly. So that's my crappy decision.
But also, I do see you in a Wrangler. Like,
thank you.
it fits with this whole vibe. And also, like, okay, so a friend of mine had the Wrangler. I don't know if the Sport was like a model or package or something just added on. But I know he had like a new air filter, and it was the V6 motor, but like new air filter and everything. And it made a lot of sound, but didn't like have a lot of go.
This is all about but that's Jeep drivers as well. They make a lot of sound and
it's just go. American. It's boisterous and loud, but it's like, are you going somewhere,
At least it sounds like you're going somewhere.
At least it does. Like, isn't that what it's about? It's like going slow, but sounding like you're going very, very quick. I don't know if you saw this, but so there's a guy I don't know if he lives in China, but he makes like specific V12 engines, 6-liter V12 engines from Mercedes, so very specific. He makes them sound like Formula One cars.
Jeez, I know.
So I can't remember what his surname is, but there's a guy he took a very old S600, like 1990s S600, same 6-liter V12. Later on from that V12 actually came the Zonda engine. So it's that line of engine, okay?
Jeez,
so very high end. Anyway, and he put this exhaust on, which cost like $12,000, so very, very expensive. And he went through it for a tunnel run. And the sound is unbelievable. Like, you always want to cry. Like, that's how beautiful it is. Like, it's Formula One level sound. And you see like a Prius just cruise past. Like, that's how slow the car was. So I feel that's sort of the similarity of Jeep. But hey, if it sounds good, it looks good, like who cares? You can only go 60 like in town.
And it is, listen, it's sad. Like if you look at, there's so many Wranglers and Jeeps out there, but the dealer network is just diminishing. The Century City dealership closed down. I think there's only one kind of standalone Jeep dealership, and it's in Takai in Cape Town. I'm sure, I don't know what Pretoria and Gauteng, the rest of Gauteng's looking like. But it is kind of devastating seeing a big brand like that everybody loves, but now all of a sudden you're sitting with one dealership in Cape Town. Sure, there's a few Oaks that kind of also sells them, but like a standalone Jeep dealership. So that's one of those brands where you thought, listen, it's big, it's American, it's like robust, and like this will kind of be the dream South African kind of brand for our market. And it's something that just kind of went down because you've got rad cars like the Ranger, you've got cool things like the Hilux, like you kind of have to compete with that market.
Very difficult market, especially
like their dealer networks, and it's something you never think of. So like I tell people nowadays, like if you're going to buy a brand where there's like a big dealer network. Look at your service plan. Like some Oaks have got insane unlimited kilometers, 5-year maintenance plans. Like it's insane. And they've obviously put a lot of trust behind claims of unlimited kilometers because they know like nothing's going to go wrong in those 5 years. But not everybody's as bold to do those kind of service plans or maintenance plans. But it's something that you have to look at, and we don't. Like me, like I know I should know better. Like I should not buy a Jeep again, but I'm going to. And it comes down to preference. But there's so many things that you have to take into consideration, and we don't, because we're quite emotional. Most of us are. You buy kind of with your heart and not with your head. But like it's interesting to see how the market kind of you still got your hardcore Jeep buyers, even though there's no dealer network. And then you've got like your hardcore Toyota buyers that will like preach to you at every single braai you go to and say like, come on,
you know
we've
those.
got thousands of dealerships. Like the service plan is great, and I love Toyota. And Lexus is probably, they are my top kind of brands from practicality, not always affordability, but kind of if you look at Lexus and their hybrid ranges, they're kind of industry leaders within that market. And we've got an interesting article actually coming out now in Apex about kind of the EV market, so like electric vehicles, where they're going to be in the next 20 years. And there's brands like Jaguar Land Rover. So from a Jaguar point of view, like in the next 20 or so years, I can't remember the exact number, it's going to be just electric vehicles, and which is weird. Like, do you
2030, I think,
do you want an F-type that's just electric? Like, it's weird. So those kind of things like evokes all these different emotions. But it's cool to see how these brands are like, we're not just cars anymore. Like, it's a lifestyle, it's different choices, and just balls to the walls, I guess, and they're just going for it.
How often do you actually drive your own car?
As little as possible because of fuel consumption. But it's difficult. Like,
because basically every other week
so my battery runs down every now and then.
Oh, really?
So that's how little I drive it.
Okay.
But like if I have to go take the dogs to the beach or something like that, I'll drive my own car. But very rarely you don't. I know journos that don't own a car. They literally just, and it's like there's not a lot of us that get a car every single week. Like even with journalists, there's like A-list and B-list and kind of who gets the most amount of cars for what time period. And obviously like car magazines, they get like first preference, but lifestyle has grown quite big for kind of the auto journos, because lifestyle is ultimately your car, it's your lifestyle. And that's where you kind of get the broader market where you're getting the tannie who wants a car for, to show off, pulling up into Bishops, picking up her lighties from school. And then you get obviously the hardcore car nut that wants to see like, when's the Golf 8 coming out? So that's the nice thing where the automotive industry has kind of opened up the doors to lifestyle and gone like, well, it's not just kind of the hardcore car fanatic that we're after. We kind of need to approach that market from a lifestyle point of view, not so in your face. But even saying that, I do think there's a big gap in the market for our car magazine.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's very interesting how things have evolved. And kind of, again, like for females now, the market continues to grow. Like, I get so excited every time I kind of meet a new female journalist.
Yeah.
And it is like, it's everybody's opinion. Like, nobody is like this hardcore expert in what you say is gold. I like to call my reviews opinions and not really reviews, because it's my opinion. I might skip a few things that other oaks would hone in on. So yeah, it comes down to, we just need to broaden this market, and I think we're very well on our way to do that.
Very exciting. It's so exciting, especially with the magazine coming.
Very excited, very nervous, but
but you've got the team, you've got the launch date, hopefully.
Yes.
So that just puts also a bit of pressure on. Okay, let's get it going.
It's go time.
But also a bit more into cars. What have been your coolest, craziest, most memorable test drives you've had this past year, whatever?
Sure, it's so difficult. Look, it is a difficult one, because you kind of, everything is special, but we went on, so the Defender 110 got launched last year, but obviously there was a delay in COVID, and we were supposed to do the launch in the beginning of the year, and then it got pushed over to November, which was so cool, because at that point so many people were kind of homebound, and that was the first trip out and about. So that was like, I think that's why it's the most memorable, because I was like, I don't have to be home. We get to be safe and secure outside of our house, but
outside of the house.
So we took the Defender, like, it was kind of a big trip that we did. I think we were about 15 journos with like just this convoy of Defenders, and it looked so badass. So we started at Durbanville Hills and drove through to Cedarburg. And it was such a rad trip, and to kind of see what that car is capable of. So we had like the open road, and then we went hardcore off-roading. So that was quite a cool trip. It made it even cooler. I don't know, well, obviously you'll know Kingsley Holgate. So they did this trip called the Mzansi Edge. So they literally took him and his son, took their Defenders, and this is kind of where they used their old Defender and then now the new Defender, and kind of check capability. And they went on the edge of South Africa, like literally kind of cutting the water. Everywhere where water is, they were literally on the coast. So then everywhere where they kind of stopped, they filled this calabash full of water to kind of connect everything, like all the different provinces and areas that they went to, and then they were going to empty the calabash where they started back in Durban or wherever they were. So they took this calabash when we went on our trip, and we joined them for one of their legs of the journey. And the cool thing is, out of one of the rivers, I got to fill the calabash. So that was
that's so cool.
And he's like a hero of mine, so it was like quite an emotional thing. And like you've got like 20 journos staring at you, and it's embarrassing, but like jeans are up in the water, off you go. So that was quite a cool thing, and that was probably something that's the most memorable. And we were sitting around a campfire, and he was just telling us stories, and this oak is like the most insane storyteller. So that was probably because of the whole journey, and the car is so capable. Like, you can trust that car. You need to trust your car when you go off-roading. It's very little to do about your own skill. Like, as soon as you can trust your car and the capability of it, and a car's insane. It's got like cameras where, like, when you go over like a little hill and you can't see what's on the other side, there's like cameras, and this car kind of adapts to the terrain. Like, not back in the day we had to climb out and put the 4x4 on the tires. Like, everything is just, that computer that's in that car is just insane. It can think any one of us. So it kind of fixes this situation before you in a situation. So that car was probably, I think probably my favorite. And then also now the M8 that I drove was that's next level. Not the prettiest car. Like, I think it's an odd shape. I drove the coupe, so kind of it looked a bit weird from a side profile, but very rarely do you get to climb in a car that turns that many heads. So funny enough, that Honda Jazz turned a lot of heads.
Oh,
it was
really?
quite embarrassing, because I was like, why is everyone staring?
That's brilliant.
That car just got launched, and it had like the hybrid sign on the back, and you'd see people go like, what is this? Like what's this hybrid thing? So that was like very fresh. The Honda Jazz and the M8 probably turned the most amount of heads, which is awkward and weird, but so I'd say the M8 and the Defender was probably my favorite drives.
So the M8, I'm very intrigued about that car. I think it's awesome looking, especially the coupe, not necessarily the cabrio. But I think it's awesome looking. I only have seen the M850 in real life, not really the M8 itself. Probably color dependent also. But where do you think it fits in? Like, what is it trying to be? Is it trying to be like a Bentley Continental GT competitor? Is it trying to be a 911 competitor? Like, probably not. But like, where is it actually fitting in?
It doesn't really fit in. Like, I feel like it's pretty much standalone. So sure, it's gonna have like, I think it's maybe its main competitor, for lack of a better word, would probably be the Audi R8.
Yes, okay.
Possibly, but I feel like that car is a lot more. So I've driven the R8 and obviously the M8, and from a accountability point of view and kind of just more a car that you can almost use day to day, I think the kind of M8 is your go-to. Like, it's like sitting on a lazy boy like that. It's such a comfortable drive that you sometimes forget you're pretty much sitting in a almost supercar. Like, it's power and everything aside, that car is super comfortable. It is a day-to-day drive if you've obviously got an unlimited petrol card. Day-to-day drive where I think like its competitors are more kind of show-off pieces and not as comfortable of a ride, and I'm probably going to get crucified for even insinuating that it's more comfortable than the R8. But again, my opinion.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of trying to be, it is that sports car that's kind of your everyday car. And there should be more of them on the road. I think we're seeing way too little of them. It could be price tag related because you're like just shy of $3.
Yeah.
But it's a very decent car. And we had the competition one, so it's obviously even more decent.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of creating an opportunity for a sports car to become an everyday car.
Yeah, and I think those, like, okay, it's an M car, it's meant to be sort of track focused hard. It's especially the competition model also. But when it comes to these kind of high end performance cars, it's sort of a luxury thing also, and it sells because it's so compelling, being so comfortable. You can actually drive it. It's not like, I have to take it out on the weekend. Maybe it appeals to a bit of an older market.
Yeah, for sure.
Just in terms of price, you can afford it, but also...
I know very few 20-year-olds that's going to afford out that kind of money.
Yeah, so in that kind of sense, maybe it is competing in a market, in terms of price, maybe double its price. It can compete with Astons, it can compete with Bentleys. Like, cars are so good these days. BMW make the cars so well these days that even with that price, maybe just the price would, say someone goes to buy the M8 and they're like, I want a comfortable everyday GT with a lot of power that makes me look super rich. And you look at that and like, it's such an awesome car, but then maybe it's too cheap, Maybe they could have made it more expensive because it's not appealing to everyday guy. Yeah. It's not. But in any case, so I want to ask you 5 questions just quickly. I might forget the fifth one. I'm not sure. But just answer whatever comes up. Okay.
Okay.
The fastest car you've ever driven?
Hey, mate.
Your dream car?
The Defender 90.
The car you hate the most? The car you detest?
Beep. Oh, jeez. Oh, I can't even. A Nissan Sentra. I know it's old
A Nissan Sentra.
A Nissan Sentra.
Was it your first car by chance?
It wasn't, but it was one of my best friend's first cars, and I detested that car.
Okay, fair. Manual or manual?
Auto.
Really? Auto?
I'm an auto all the way.
Okay, interesting. And your favorite road trip? Like, if you had to choose a car on the road trip?
Sure. I don't like going very far because I'm all about comfort, but like a cool trip to, I don't know, Steelies.
As you do.
Go to Steelies, and ultimate car would probably be like a Range Rover Sport. Just to kind of like, you play the part pulling up to Dallegraaf or something like that. So
The Range
Cape Town
Rover.
to Selly's Range
Just
Rover
remember,
Sport.
like for your average Stellenbosch guy, the Range Rover Sport, it doesn't have a good connotation because it's very much in line with any BMW. Like it's the status mobile. I can do anything, park anywhere, squeeze in front of everyone, like make way, you peasant. So
Well, that's what it's about.
yeah, it is. It is. One day you'll also be in the Range Rover position. You'll be like, I actually don't care what you think about me. I drive a Range Rover.
I think that's what it comes down to. People don't care. Like if you drive that car, you're like, oh, I've got it. So just move.
Just like go, leave me alone. Anyway, Vann, I want to thank you. Thank you for spending some time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having a passion on cars, you know, the wine and whatever. I don't really care. It's just the cars. But thank you for having the passion. Thank you for sharing the passion. Thank you for taking the chance. And like, of course, we chatted about the females and not being as prominent as the men. But hey, like, I really don't care. Like, if you like your cars, you're passionate about it, doesn't really matter. So thank you for sharing that passion. Cool. I usually say at the end of my podcast, it's better loving cars than loving drugs, you know, because it's quite a simple one, but
it's more expensive.
It is more expensive. Yeah, very. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining. Thank you for listening. Apex coming out soon.
Yeah, go follow us.
Go follow.
apexmag.co.za.
Apex Mag. Go Southern Vines.
Southern Vines.
And then Wines.
Wine, Wheels and Watches.
Wine, Wheels and Watches.
We'll get it next time with the wine lined up.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Cheers.
Hope you have a good one. Cheers.